People see a post, see an illustration or an animation, and the first question is which software. But I do believe that it doesn't matter too much, because also I don't like it to be limited to the software that you have, of the power of your machine. It doesn't really matter. It shouldn't matter.
Welcome to a new episode of Brushing Up. And this episode is a special one because we've got a guest on, Giulia, who is an animator. And I know Giulia from Skillshare. We were thinking it'd be a great idea to talk about animation and how it overlaps with the world of illustration.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. So to jump straight into the topic, I think, to have a short answer, what brought me to animation was music. First of all, because I needed to make some music videos. And that was my first approach when I was not at all an animation student. And I started to play around with stop motion. That was the very first approach to animation. And then a couple of years later, I discovered an animation school in my city, and that's where it all started.
That's super interesting. I like how you can start from music.
I wasn't expecting that answer, and I realized I didn't even know that. That's so fun.
Yeah. It's it sometimes it's funny. I find in life how things are connected, and so randomly connected, or apparently randomly connected. Yeah, I was studying something different, and I was having side jobs to pay my rent as a student, and I was working in an opera theater, and I started to sing, and this all led one thing's led to another, and I found myself then applying to the animation school.
Wow.
And where did you study animation? Because you're currently based in Zurich in Switzerland, right? Did you study
Yes.
there as well?
No, I studied in Turin, Italy, which is my hometown. There I did my bachelor in animation, and after that I did a sort of European program. That was a sort of postgraduate program. And at that point, I was already living in Germany. And then I moved here. And now I'm also studying again animation to get a master degree. And so it's in Switzerland this time.
Cool. And the master's is animation in general or anything specific?
It's called animation. There are different tracks, and I chose concept track. There is experimental or production, and I'm there to develop a series so that I can have the time to jump and the opportunity to jump to a longer format, because an animated series is much more work than short films. But I'm not completely alone because I have the support of the faculty and mentors and so on.
We actually, when Cody was doing some, research into your work, I think, Cody, you said that you saw that Julia was working on a children's book. I'm super
Yeah.
curious to hear about this experience. Can you tell us a bit about that project?
Yes, and of course, it also, I think it's nice because it connects with our topic today about how animation and illustration can merge. And it actually all started, I mean, I've always been drawing, but my studies brought me to moving image rather than printed image. But when I moved here in Switzerland, I shared the studio for a couple of years with other creatives. Some of them were motion designers, so more or less in my world. But there was one illustrator for picture books, and I learned so much from this artist, which is Frenchy Sanna, by the way. And our studio was full of books, not just from Frenchy, but in general, we had so much to see and to look into. And I realized if I know children's books or illustrated books, I didn't really know enough. And I learned so much by sharing the space with other creatives. And I started to learn about printed image, because that's something that as an animator you don't really know, the printed format and the colors are different and the size is different. And I started to realize what are the similarities and the differences. And I was more and more interested in it. And because there is a mentorship project in Switzerland where you are mentored to publish your first book. Yeah, I thought could be a good chance to try to go in that direction and branch a little bit out and combine animation with storytelling, but not in movie storytelling, even if I'm trying to keep some kind of animation vibes in the book as well. So yeah, now I just started this adventure, and by the end of the year, hopefully I will have a book.
Wow.
Mm.
So do you think that your animation skills will translate to, creating a children's picture book? I would think that in thinking about it, the storytelling aspect would translate
Yeah.
really easily.
Sequence, right? Like sequences.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as I mentioned, there are a lot of similarities and differences. So for sure, there is some part of storytelling that overlaps. So the way you present maybe the shot or the composition, but in another way, there are a lot of differences. If you think about animation being a moving action, so it's really focusing on the movement, on the rhythm, and the book having another kind of rhythm is the rhythm of text, which we don't really have in animation, and images, or the rhythm of turning the page, which is something also completely different. And another difference is the level of details, or in a way, because animation needs to be quite minimal, especially when it's independent animation, while in an illustrated book you have a certain number of pages, and there you can put all the details you want and textures, and yeah.
It's really cool, like listening to you talk about like the rhythm, because it almost like brings back to what you were saying with what drew you to animation with music, and rhythm goes along with music, and so it's almost like a little bit of a full circle in a way.
Yes, very much. Yeah, it's true. And also in animation, you can have the support of sound, which is also something that you don't have in the printed form. But again, in the printed form, you can play with typography, which is something also new for me. Then there is a difference of formats, which is super interesting. In animation or in film, the format is quite standard. There are maybe one or two standard formats. In the books, you can have different shapes and even have maybe pages that have some windows or some holes, so you can play much more with that format.
And what do you think of what are some of the similarities between animation and, for example, illustrating a children's book? I'm thinking of perhaps maybe like playing with certain compositions, but what do you think?
Yes, so for example, in this specific case, I applied with a project with the explicit intent to try to bring some animation into it. And the way I'm planning to do it is to actually draw some sequences, like in a sort of panels sequence, or the same character doing something. For example, if the character is crossing the page from right to left, really have it redrawn in a couple of times, but also movement in the sense that maybe you can open the page and have a sort of harmonica page that allows the movement to actually move outside of the book. I'm trying to imagine ways to kind of implement movement into the printed world. So yes, I'm curious to see where this will bring me. And another big difference that I found is in terms of solitary or teamwork, because I feel in animation we learn how to work in crews and teams. It's very crucial and part of the process. Of course, as I mentioned before, independent animation very often is one person or maybe two, three. But even so, when you are animating a 5 minutes short, you need a couple of helpers and animators and sound designer. Even in the animation school, they teach you how to adapt to different styles so that you can jump from one production to the other. And I feel the illustration world is almost the opposite. It's very focused on the personal style.
Mm.
and it's very solitary. And yeah, that's a big difference that I find, and it's also interesting to think about this.
Like that is so new to me. It's really interesting because Cody and I, we were talking a last episode about collaborations and how the world of surface design and the world of illustration are so solitary, especially if you work by yourself as a freelancer. It can be really difficult to find ways to work with other people. So it's actually really nice to hear that in other creative industries, there's so much collaboration and it's almost a necessity because animations are such big productions that you need to be able to work with other people.
Yes, and if like on this note, I think it's important to animation is such a big box. So if the general audience thinks about animation, what they think is Pixar or Disney or these kind of films that you can watch in cinemas. And those are huge productions. They involve hundreds and hundreds of people. In each department, they have someone dedicated only to character design and someone dedicated only to line art, someone coloring and compositing. It's a huge pipeline, really. But animation can be many different things. Animation, it could also be independent film festivals, and their films can be made by 10 people, 5 people, sometimes one person. So of course we can imagine how the style, the duration, the quality changes because animation is everything. Animation is moving a pencil with stop motion, but it's making also huge masterpieces that last 1 hour and a half. And animation is also commercial animation. So this kind of motion design that we see even on a bus, when you're on a bus and you see the text coming in and saying next stop, blah, 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 that's animation. Every billboard. There are a lot of different things into the label animation. And I think it's interesting to keep this in mind when we approach it. For example, when someone is interested and wants to become a student, one of the first question could be, what do you have in mind or what would you like to do? Is it more commercial jobs? Is it music videos, another completely different field? Is it, yeah, motion design, so maybe something more clean and vector, or is it brushy, hand drawn, frame by frame animation?
Yeah. There's
Mm.
lots of different types of industries that you could get into if you want to get into animation.
Yeah, yes, I think so. And it's also, of course, it's a choice, but it's also, I feel when you are fresh out of school, you feel like you need to find a job. And so you're very malleable and ready to do everything. But it is kind of a choice and it dictates a lot of things in your work life, even lifestyle. Because if you're going to work in a advertising agency or yeah, in a big production, probably it's going to be like more closer to a regular job in terms of income. But if you decide to do more artistic work, it's more again as an artistic life or a freelance based kind of lifestyle.
Yeah. Basically what your day-to-day could look like, right? As an animator. What does it look like for you? Apart from the project you were talking about before, the children's book, what sort of things do you work on? What does your day look like?
Well, as a full-time freelancer, I have to say I don't have a typical day. And it's funny, sometimes people ask me, what kind of client jobs do you do, or what kind of animation do you do? It really changes for me, at least month by month. It depends very much. So it could be some educational video for maybe a company who wants to tell something, or even not even a company. Sometimes it's like some TED videos, for example, are just purely educational, or it could be some commercial. So yeah, more or less artistic, let's say. It could also be more corporate. It could be more fun, like GIFs, something short. Or sometimes as we mentioned before, I collaborate with other people. So I just do a tiny part of the actual project. For example, in the past weeks, I was doing some cell animation, which is the frame by frame animation, just the rough and the clean, which is only the not with color, let's say, just the first step of animation. And then this work that I did goes to another team that makes it, puts it into After Effects, makes it vector, and combines it with motion graphics to then make maybe some billboards or something else that I don't even know. I'm not involved in that. So you are sometimes part of a chain, or yeah, like sort of factory work, because the creative agency in this case could commission something here and then bring it to another team and move it on. But sometimes could be short films, and that's much more, for me, more interesting or creative. It means the client or whoever comes to you has an idea, a concept, but let you the direction, freedom to decide storyboarding, character design, and you just complete a whole animated short film for them. So it's really various. Yeah, and it could be very diverse also in terms of how the day looks like, because some days are very much admin stuff, or you don't really touch the pencil so much. Maybe there is a lot of back and forth and emails or calls. And some other days might be the full day, just headphones, some music, and you animate. Which, I mean, I like both parts of the job, even though sometimes the admin is too much and you wonder when is the creative part coming.
Mhm.
But it's a good balance, I feel that. And I also like that every month is different, even though it also means that it's always unsure how the next month will go.
Yeah. The life
Mm.
of a lot of creative freelancers, I guess. There's a lot of admin involved, a lot more than people realize, but you get to work on your own creative projects too. I wanted to ask as well, you mentioned quite a lot that you go to different festivals and that's
Yeah.
how you also speak with people on your podcast, right?
Yes.
So what does that look like? How often do you travel? What do you do at these festivals? What does that kind of weekend look
Yeah.
like for you?
Well, animated animation festivals are something that I discovered during my school years. I didn't even know they existed. I think they are a sort of bubble just for the industry, because they're not usually attended by the regular audience. They are mainly attended by animation folks. And I really enjoy this kind of little bubble and discovering those festivals. Basically, festival could be film festivals, but in this case, let's talk about animation festivals. They are some kind of events. I want to say that almost every city has one, but let's say every country for sure has a couple,
Mhm.
and they happen throughout the years in different moments. And they select films. In animation, it's better to talk about short films because, as I mentioned before, it's very tedious to make a long film, especially in small teams and in an independent kind of atmosphere. And the reason why I like them, it's exactly for this particular characteristic. It's not what you see in the big cinemas or what you find in the general distribution platforms. Those festivals are the only opportunity really to watch independent animation, which is a lot. It's incredible how much animation is created every year. And usually there are short films for that come from graduation projects, so it's like from schools, but then and also professional short films. And I think one reason why I like them, not only because they're outside of the commercial bubble, so you don't see the trendy looks and classic designs that you find, for example, in the internet or you can imagine. But it's because they're not commercial works, they're not made to sell something. They're often very poetic or deep or even very silly. So there was not a commission or a client kind of limiting the creative decisions. And but now that I'm saying this, I also want to say sometimes in the festivals there are also commission selections. So there are some selections that are only for commission works. And I think the reason why there are these selections is because it's very hard for an animator to be happy and proud about a commission work because they involve so much negotiations, and you don't have so much freedom and etc. And so maybe those selections are especially good because those are the ones that manage to actually make something nice out of a commission work,
Hmm.
which is also interesting. But in general, yes, there are. Sorry, I'm talking a lot about this because I really love festivals. But the reason why you go there is I started to go as a student to get to know how festivals work, and then you go afterwards as a professional, usually with a film. So you are invited if your film is selected. There you go to screenings, of course, but there are Q&As or master classes or some kind of conferences, and sometimes exhibitions or events around the festival. But they are the only social moment for an animator, I feel, to go out of the cave and meet people and show the work, be inspired, maybe meet a couple of people for the next project, maybe some producers, and so maybe pitch a new project and then go back to for a couple of years to
To
animate
the
the
cave.
next. Yeah.
That's nice. So that's also a really nice opportunity to meet potential collaborators. And I like what you said about having this category of showing commissioned animation works as well to show where the overlap is of like, these are commissions, these are made by people like their passion projects, their personal projects, or in a completely independent animation sphere. It's nice that there is opportunity for both.
And I want to say, because I didn't know at all in the beginning, there are also some feature films projected, and those feature films are usually co-productions between different countries, so that studios come together and they make a bigger film. But in general, what I wanted to say is that I realized later that those films, not just the feature films, also short films, and we're talking about 10, 15 minutes film, 20 minutes films. Also, even when the team is good and big, it's maybe 20, 30, 40 people involved, and they're very good films. They're usually investment from the company or from the studio side. It's not something you earn from. Those festivals are a sort of portfolio situation where you show your product or your capabilities. I mean, I cannot talk for every animator or every studio, but most of the times studios have some commercial jobs on the side, some clients, and then maybe they take time to do a personal project, personal short film that they send to festivals.
Okay. So that's a nice balance. No.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned how the festivals are nice because it's a lot of like personal portfolio type of work, and mentioning like almost it gets you away from all those trends that you get more with the commercial work.
We talked about this because what is becoming more important for clients, and a lot of it is not just animation, but lots of like interactive designs, micro interactions. So like little things that move on the screen, especially for social media campaigns. There's
Yeah.
so much more video and interactive design involved now. And it's maybe not so much animation on its own, but just things moving on a screen, seemingly becoming more and more important.
Yeah, it is animation. I would say maybe it falls more into the motion design basket,
Mm.
but I know what you're talking about. I was also collaborating for a year or so as a freelancer with advertising agency here, and it was a little frustrating for me because my job was literally to move text on screen or yeah, little things, which for from a, let's say, traditional 2D animation point of view, it's a little boring because it's only about maybe the text coming in and the image appearing. But this is what it's true. It's very much used in advertisement and marketing, social media, for example.
Mm.
And I agree more and more now, not only with Instagram or internet and social media being everywhere, companies, they do feel the need to be there, and it's a visual place, and motion images kind of attract the attention, and they are probably more appealing than a still image. I guess because of attention span, you want to attract the viewer's eye for that second. And I think also going a little bit in the topic of the day, I also think the hype around Procreate Dreams a little bit connects to this, because Procreate Dreams, which launched not so many months ago, appears to be a tool for the general audience as well, that makes animation easier. But even before that, I think even with Canva or other softwares, people can do some kind of transitions or movements. And it's true that more and more people not directly involved into the animation industry are interested in knowing how to move things. Yeah.
Do you think that sort of like animation becoming more accessible, that for you there's more opportunity there to actually, apart from, making some text move, like to incorporate some like more fulfilling animation projects, that there's space to do that?
I'm not sure about this because, so first of all, I usually don't work as a motion designer. So these
Mm,
kind of jobs, these are not usually what I do. Even if I can do it, I'm not specialized in motion design, which is usually After Effects, for example. I don't know. I almost feel like the opposite, because it's becoming easier to do it with any tool. You don't need to learn the basics of animation to move a text. You could have a template that tells you there are these 3, 4, 5 different ways to make the text appear, and you choose from them without knowing exactly what's
yeah.
the theory behind it, right? And in a way, it's good for me, I think, because it means that maybe then the more boring or plain easy jobs can be automated and done in other ways. And so I don't know. It's true, for example, that during the pandemic there was a spike in the animation industry, because it was not possible to shoot live anymore for a while, and so the animation industry experienced a good time in that
Mm,
period, because there was more requests for animations.
yeah.
So I don't know, it depends, I think, from first of all, in which area of animation you want to work, and then, yeah, from which perspective you're watching it. I find it interesting and useful for sure that more and more people are interested in it, because first of all, I'm happy that more people want to learn animation, and maybe I can teach something, but also because it's important, I think, for the animators to that the world is aware of the time that it takes, because that's a problem in animation. That it's very mind blowing to people to realize that to animate 1 minute it takes 1 month, um, and it's good if the world starts to acknowledge the time that it takes to make a good animation.
It's very time consuming. Yeah.
I think I was gonna ask, have you used Procreate Dreams?
Yeah. Actually, I feel a little silly. I don't know how I didn't imagine that Procreate Dreams itself, they of course planned the launch in a way that they involve many, I don't know, many hundreds of artists all over the world, giving them the license like 6 months before the launch,
Yeah.
so that there was so much content coming
True.
by the day of the launch. But on the other hand, I thought it's okay, because they were having a lot of bugs and updating every week or
True.
so. So I still did my 2 Procreate Dreams classes, but like a month ago, and I had the time to explore it more and experiment with it more. Yeah,
I was just gonna ask if you liked it.
it's a great tool. It For so many reasons. It's been a great also market move. I feel it's extremely cheap for what it is, and which makes it more affordable and reachable for a larger audience. It's good because it's kind of combining the motion design that I mentioned before and the traditional animation together. And it's incredible. The biggest news for me is the speed in kind of rendering images and videos, especially. I tried so much before to animate on top of footage, and this is the first time that footage is not causing problem and slowing everything down. And that's also why my classes are basically about animating on footage. I think it's a great news for the animation process. Yeah.
In a way, like your two new Skillshare classes about Procreate Dreams, they're a way of like combining animation with like photography, social media. So kind of like a way for illustrators, surface designers, graphic designers to incorporate animation into their work, which is it's a nice crossover.
Yes, I was trying to address a broader audience and not only animators, and I feel that it's a great tool to be able to combine even simple animations, but into any content. In this particular case, I focused on footage as a sort of background, so you can shoot a video with your phone and then on top add some animation, but it could be applied to even to illustration or a still image, and then you can import it on Procreate Dreams and move things, which is also amazing. Actually, Claire, the very first test I did with Procreate Dreams was to take that lettering illustration I made with your class, the one that I had with ghosts. It was lift your spirits. And because Procreate Dreams can talk so easily with Procreate, you can just drop the project in the Procreate Dreams app, and you already have all the layers separated, and there you can put them. And that's a great tool, I feel. Because before that, let's say I have a Photoshop illustration and I want to animate it, what I have to do is you can import the Photoshop project in After Effects, but it's a mess of reorganizing the layers, renaming the layers, and it's much more complicated. After Effects is more like it's huge and it's an amazing software, but it's not so general public friendly. It's really a sort of huge machine full of buttons. And I feel with Procreate Dreams, they managed to make it more friendly and more intuitive as well.
Yeah. So what are some ways that you think that, for example, illustrators, someone who has no idea how animation works, what are some ways that they could maybe incorporate animation into their work?
Now I'm having a blank.
Well, we got it. Yeah. We're gonna put an image here.